would like to call to order the April 4th, 2022 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome, everyone. First up is the approval of the work session agenda, and you all have a copy of that before you. Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting agenda, including the changes on page 3? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. That motion passes. And we move to discussion items. And first up, from Infrastructure and Asset Management, is an update on the Emergency Medical Services Headquarters, and Mr. Kyle Billifer will handle that.
Good evening. I just want to give you a brief update on the EMS headquarters. I'm sure you're all driving by it. Obviously, weather has not been our friend. Lauren, could you display the images? But we have made a lot of progress, specifically subgrades. So it's kind of an aerial that shows you the site, looking for perspective of the intersection of Union Cemetery and Cabarrus. And you can actually see your stormwater features that are happening there. So the large one that looks like it's holding water right now up there on Cabarrus Avenue, that's proving to be the most challenging in terms of rock removal and where the outlet pipe needs to go. That also happens to be positioned right next to a high pressure gas line, which even makes that work much more on edge as we go through that. So we are continuing that. We've made great progress in all of our subgrade stormwater, our subgrade sprinkler lines, our subgrade electric. So all that's going in. There's been no connections to the actual utilities from the city. Those connections, that pre-con meeting is scheduled for next week. So after we go through that pre-con meeting with the city, we can start making those connections. Probably the next significant change that the board and the public will see, that over the next 2 weeks, the steel will start to be erected. In fact, the first date was today, and we've since pushed back to the 11th, and based on what we're supposed to get this Tuesday and Thursday, I would imagine that would be pushed back another week. But all of our geotechnical reports have come back that show all of our footers and all of our subgrade concrete has met all of the PSI restrictions to accept that steel. So that is the step in the right direction to start being to erect that steel. And we have some other pictures we can go through, and I can just kind of show you different aerials. So that shows you the other stormwater control measure we have, or BMP. That's at the rear of the facility, so that would be adjacent to the vehicle maintenance or the bus garage for the school systems. If you can go to the next slide, Laura. Oh, okay, I had sent some other pictures that shown some close-ups. All the close-up pictures I had were just basically showing the sublines going in and all the concrete going into the site. But again, nothing has gone vertical yet, but look for that in the next 2 weeks, weather permitting. And we're still on schedule for the April 2023. Any questions?
Just real quickly, Kyle,
Sure.
I can't think of what you referred to them at. There's 2 of them there, stormwater basins.
Stormwater control
Will
measures.
those stay, or do they go away?
They're
after this
modified.
project?
So what you're looking at is construction stormwater BMPs, and they end up being modified to become sand filters once we're said and done. The one on 601 will be a sand filter. So when you start to see development happen in tight spaces, you start to get away from ponds and you go to what sand filters are. So we do have one at our new operations center. It's right there on Ramden Court, and it's about half the size of a stormwater pond. And that's designed to kind of hold and flush and absorb versus just hold, which you would see with a detention pond.
Will that require fencing and all of that for security purposes? or safety?
On one of those, there'll be some fencing around the complex. On the one in the front, no, that'll be outside of our fencing. And no, it's not someplace that a sand filter, you can't drown in it unless you do have a significant rain. So we had 1.6 inches last Thursday or Friday, and the one at our site at the operations center, I would say probably up to your thighs,
Wow.
maybe. not any deeper than that.
Well,
It's
that's
not-
always a concern of mine, and I'm sure the other commissioners feel the same way, but I thought I'd ask you that. Thank you.
Yeah, stormwater control measures are proved to be a cost to the county in terms of ongoing maintenance that you
Right.
have to go through.
Absolutely. Thank you,
And as our
Colin.
sites squeeze and tighten, both for us and the schools, you'll see more of those sand filters come into play.
Any other questions for Kyle? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is our Innovation and Technology Report, and we're happy to have Todd Shanley for that item.
Afternoon. This afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about the Lockhart Child Development Center. But before I introduce Carla and Wynette, I'm just going to give you a quick preview. This month, we're going live with our new website design. Next month, Kasha and I will be back in front of you to walk you through the entire design and everything else, but wanted to give you a first look at this before it goes live later this month. And here is the first page of the redesign. Not drastically different because we've obviously gone through an entire rebranding a couple years ago, and the colors and things are mostly the same. The 6 blocks that you see here at the bottom of the page are highly visited sites. So we push those to the top to be able to provide quicker access. The goal of our website, obviously, is to get people to what they're looking for quickly and do that well, so that you'll see the search bar at the very top of the page that will have some predictive search, and we'll talk about that next month. But additional pages here, we'll have this section here in the middle that will give features, latest news, the service centers. The postings will be a very important spot for all of our public notices and what have you, so they'll be more prevalent and easier to find on the new website. This is a new section, the What's Around Me. You'll be able to type in an address, your address at home, or an address that you'll be near, and find out what's going on or what events or county facilities are near there. So it's a very interesting thing. And then we're able to focus the board's top priorities here in this rotator. So obviously I did a screen capture here. It's on a live demo today. I try to avoid those. But the opioid epidemic is obviously something you guys have focused on in the past. So that is a priority for 2022. And there's, looks like 8 of those that we can put in that rotator. And then finally, this is a new feature on our site that allows us to showcase the board members and their contact info, along with, that's the bottom footer that is very common on most websites. But just wanted to give you an opportunity to see that before the public does later this month. And as we go live, it's as you see it, or if you have feedback from others once we're live, please reach out to me, or either there'll be a way for the people to provide that feedback via the website. So we're looking forward to really connecting with our constituents and getting good info out there. As I mentioned, Carla and Wynette are here to talk about the Lockhart Child Development Center and the innovation at work. Just drive it right there if you like. Yeah, if you want to hit the, you can just hit the arrows.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Carla Brown, and I'm the Early Childhood Education Coordinator for the county, and I wanted to just share with you some, and give you an update, as well as share some great news and information about the Lockhart Child Development Center. A few years ago, members of the Early Childhood Task Force Advisory Board came up with an innovative idea and recommendation, and they presented this information to the Board of Commissioners, and you all supported it and approved it. So as a result, a public-private partnership between Cabarrus County government and All Saints Episcopal Church was formed. And this was a very exciting partnership. We knew that this partnership would actually establish a child development center. And this was really important because within the county, issues still ongoing regarding accessibility and affordability is a huge issue, as most of you know. So with the development of Lockhart Child Development Center, there were going to be increase slots for families in the community. And this was going to include children birthed to 3 years of age, which those are very limited. Availability slots for 0 to 3 are very limited within the county. So not only would this establish new slots, but it would also reserve 40 slots for county employees. So there were 40 slots reserved, and the county also decided they would pay 50% cost of tuition for the families who took advantage of this benefit. So not only did this address some of the accessibility, because many neighborhoods in the county are childcare deserts, meaning that they are limited to no licensed childcare facilities within the neighborhood. And affordability is also an issue, with some families paying anywhere between 21 to 26% of their income for childcare. So we were really excited about it, and after a lot of hard work, dedication, and commitment, Lockhart Child Development Center opened on September 27, 2021. That opened with 21 children and 5 staff. Today, there are 66 children and 15 staff. 25 of the 66 children are county employee children, and there are probably about 6 other families on the wait list, and these families are not expecting to need care until October or November of this year. So they're already on the wait list. One of the components about this partnership also included that we needed quality staff, because we know that quality staff are important to the learning development in the brain architect and building of children's brain. So the Lockhart Child Development Center currently has 2 staff that have their bachelor's degree. 10 have an associate degree. Of those 10, 3 of them are also, with the associate degree, they're working on their bachelor's degree. They also have staff. 3 of the current cooks and/or floaters in the facility are working towards their associate degree. All lead and co-teachers have an associate degree or higher. Another part of this is that the partnership included that Lockhart Child Development Center would serve as a lab site for Roy and Cabarrus Community College students. We know that this is very important, that students receive hands-on, relevant experience as is a part of their preparation program. So currently Lockhart has 3 early childhood students who are on site, as well as 1 occupational therapy student. Within this short period of time, Lockhart has also created other partnerships with agencies within the community. Various outside agencies come on site to provide early intervention services, and those include speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, social, emotional, and behavior therapy. This is important because children need to have these therapies occur in their learning environment where they're going to be practicing these skills and strategies. It's also important so that therapies can see whether or not the strategies that they're offering are even feasible for that learning environment. So it's important that they have formed this partnership and that they allow the therapists to come on site, because it's really beneficial for all. And also the teachers can see what the strategies are and support the children, and then pass information maybe on to families as needed as well. Lockhart also is partnering with Endless Opportunities, and they are participating in their Parents as Teachers program. With this opportunity, parents are able to secure a scholarship for care at Lockhart, and in turn, that parent either has to volunteer for 20 hours per week if they're not working or in school. The 3 to 4-year-olds are able to participate in orth music lessons weekly. Music as a part of play is really important because this also increases their vocabulary. It helps with pre-reading, math skills, as well as social skills. And one of the other things that Lockhart has also achieved is they have become a scholarship recipient of a new program in North Carolina called the Infantile Trauma Informed, the ITI Care Project. And the ITI Care Project is really unique in that it is supporting the workforce to help them understand about stress and trauma for infants and toddlers. We're now, research is showing, and especially after COVID, that this stress and trauma is appearing earlier. So these early interventions must occur. It's really important, and it's also important for staff to be aware of what the red flags are. So participation in this project gets coaching, consultation for their staff, training, and also it helps them. There's a component of the project that talks about the well-being and the health of the caregiver, which is also very important and often overlooked. They've got a lot of exciting things going on, and I would like to turn over to Ms. Ornette Taylor, the Executive Director, to share some really exciting news with you guys. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Waynette Taylor, and I'm the Executive Director at Lockhart Child Development Center, and it's an honor to be here. Since we at the status of the star-rated license, I remember sharing when we had our ribbon cutting that we would be 5 stars. We would not see it any other way. You can get 13 points, 14 points, or 15 points, and it's only 15 points that you can earn to have 5 stars. So not only did we get our 5 stars, but we also got a perfect score of 15 out of 15. I'm very excited to share that because that means that not only did we meet the program minimum, but the highest enhanced quality points that you can have for quality child care. So we're offering quality child care at a very, very good affordable rate based on what we could with 15 out of 15 points and 5 stars. So that's very exciting. The teachers did a fantastic job. We worked on it every month, trying to make sure that we had everything in order, and we just followed the rules and did what we had to do, but we ended up with 15 out of 15 points, 5-star rating, and we're looking forward to now being nationally accredited. So we're gonna go for a national accreditation. We'll be set on the map with Cabarrus County. So that's our next goal.
Thank you, guys. Any questions?
How are the students from RCCC? Are they enjoying the opportunity, or they fitting in well? Or
Absolutely, they enjoyed it so much that we hired 4 of them. So they are not only students, but they are our staff now. So we was able to bring them on, and they started off just doing their practicum and their studies there. They got in the classroom, enjoyed it so much, thought they'll make a career out of it, and so we hired them, and they are all working towards their degree now. One actually graduated in December. So, yeah.
So the students that we're talking about, when will the next group of students rotate in, and how does that time frame work?
They rotate by their semesters, so it's based on their semesters. Right now, we have an office occupation therapist because we do not want to just focus on early childhood. Early childhood is very important, but we also need mental health, physical therapy, social, emotional behavior, things happening in the child care center. So we opened up the college for all of their programs to come out and work with us, even psychology and administrators, so that they can come out and get that. So that's why we have an office occupational therapist with us now. And she's actually working with the specialist, and her and the specialist come in and work with our children. So it just rotates by their semesters or how many credit hours they need within a field site. So it just depends.
Well, and part of the reason that I asked that question, and of course, for those of you that do not know, Waynette's background is in education and was with Rowan Cabarrus Community College previously. But one of the advantages that I hope that we will enjoy from this Child Development Center is the fact that we will be supporting other child development centers in the community by helping to provide a pipeline of qualified employees for others as well. And so do you feel like we're on track to accomplish that goal?
Absolutely. I'm actually playing a couple roles because I'm still with the college so that I can stay on as an employee there, so I can place the students there up under an instructor. So I'm still with the college so that we can make sure that we get everyone trained and out there. We have also partnered with different child care facilities already to where they're contacting us and saying, hey, do you have this? Another great thing we have started to do is work with child care centers for our teachers to be able to go out to the other centers and just observe, see what's happening, what's working well at their center, what they can take back and put into another center or with their children and in the classroom. So we're serving as a site for even child development centers already out there. So we have partnered very well with everyone, so it's working well.
Yeah, good. And I think it's important for the public to understand that we are not doing this to compete with other child care centers. We're doing this to support other child care centers. And, you know, we talk, I mean, that's a very comfortable buzzword. We talk about public-private partnerships all the time, and we talk about partnerships with faith-based organizations. But this is an actual example of where we have done that and where it is working. And I think that, and you ladies could probably spit out more statistics than we have time to listen to, but I think that there's a lot of really strong data that shows that children that receive this solid early education foundation are children that we will not see using our human services in later years and will not be residents of our jail in later years. And so there is truly a significant savings to the taxpayer. It's not immediate, but long-term, and certainly the things that you talk about trauma-informed and being able to identify some of the situations that some children come from that I think is kind of inconceivable to a lot of folks. But, I mean, it as you know, I certainly have been a strong supporter of this program from the beginning, and it is just really exciting to hear these kind of good reports that some of the things that we talked about are actually in place, actually working. And then I think in addition to that, Cabarrus County, just like every other employer anywhere in the region, sometimes has challenges getting enough qualified employees to fill the slots that we have and the needs that we have. So when we can provide an advantage to them in childcare that helps us to obtain and retain quality employees, that's a big advantage to us as well. And hopefully there's some private corporations in our community that are observing the good example that's being set here, and that will help to maybe they will see the value in that as well. So I mean, I just see mountains of positive outcomes anytime that we can get children on the right start and help to send them on to productive futures. That's kind of things that gives us cold chills when it's working.
Yes, we're hoping that others will see this and certainly model it replicate or come up with other innovative ideas as a means to support families within the community. Because sometimes childcare, a decision about childcare is certainly a decision about whether or not they should even be entering into the workforce. And especially for women, we've had a lot that have left the workforce because of childcare issues during the pandemic. So we're really hopeful. We're proud of everything that has been accomplished, and hopefully that it will certainly be a model for others to consider. Because as you said, Commissioner Martley, the return may not be evident right now, but the return will certainly show up later in our young citizens who can become a productive part of the workforce. And some say the return is $7 for every $1. That's a great return. I've even seen some recent research that says $13 for every $1. That's even better. So I think if we just, recognize that and take this opportunity to really think about how to invest, it will certainly return twofold in the future.
I think the return, whether it's 6 or 13 is great, but I think what's more important is the lives
Exactly.
that you're making a difference in the potential future that we're offering for our citizens and their children. So I think that's great. And I think the 15 out of 15 was said just very casually, but I really think that deserves a round of applause.
Yes.
So that's no small feat, so congratulations, and especially such a short amount of time, so congratulations.
I just wanted to say I'm impressed. I really am very impressed. Takes a lot to impress me, but I'm impressed with what you ladies have done. And if you remember, my fellow commissioners, I was against this at first. Matter of fact, I was the Lone Ranger. I said no. And there's a time that when you're wrong, say I was wrong, and I was wrong. And you girls have proved that tonight with the success of the program, 15 points, 5-star, and that was, something that you set out to do. It was a mindset, and you done it, and I just wish you more success with it, and it's something else that Cabarrus County can be proud of. So thank you.
Yes. Several people that I've spoken with are really interested in our story, and several people have contacted me. I spoke with someone on Friday, and she's out of Raleigh with NC Child, and she's actually coming to town on Thursday, and she invited me to her workshop, and she'd like to meet with me afterwards. She said she wants to tell this story. So we're definitely on the map in how the county has invested in this, and even have a early childhood educator coordinator on staff, and which was also a recommendation from the task force. So just please, as you hear us talk about our early childhood task force, we're asking people and citizens and partners and businesses to certainly be involved and support us as well.
And I was just going to make a quick comment, Carla. Thank you for your leadership as you've taken this and run with it since we set it up. But Lynette, I'm going to dovetail on something Commissioner Shue said, and that's just your mindset. And your enthusiasm is evident. And my guess is it is quite infectious to the staff and to the students that are there. And there's one of my sayings, I taught my children this, I used to tell people this all the time, there's no substitute for enthusiasm. I mean, you can go a long way and do a lot of things when you're just enthusiastic about what you're doing. So to have that mindset to say, hey, we're going to get the score of 15, we're going to get 5 stars, and not backing down from that challenge says a lot about you and your character. And we're lucky to have you over there. And thank you very much for all your hard work.
Yes.
I'd also like to echo that. Thank you very much for all your hard work. I think it's a wonderful asset for the county. I was there in January for the ribbon cutting, so it really didn't take you that long to get the 5 stars because I remember you talking about it. So congratulations, and keep up that hard work. I mean, more great things are coming your way, and I do appreciate all your, like Blake said, enthusiasm and drive.
Yeah, and hopefully you will take back to our early childhood task force. They are the ones that really have made these recommendations and have been involved in the planning process.
Absolutely.
And we owe them a great deal of gratitude. I think that, Carla, you used the word a few minutes ago, investment. And I think that's the key, is the fact that we are making an investment in the future. And I think it's one that definitely comes with a return. And so we appreciate you two ladies and the task force and all the other ones involved really making it shine. And I hope it will be an example for some other counties and other parts of the state, because we enjoy looking at the good work they do in other areas, and when we have an opportunity to duplicate it, we do. And so we welcome the fact that they may duplicate some of our efforts.
Just to add to that, the first week of August, right, July, all 100 counties will be here. We are hosting the County Commissioners Conference, so I'll be reaching out to you to maybe do a short session over there
Okay,
to
absolutely.
enlighten them on what we're doing, so.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, if you two ladies will remain at the desk, we're going to move to discussion items for action. And we have one, which is item 4.18. And I would like to move that up to the top of the list while we have you with us. And this is regarding a proclamation for the Week of the Young Child. And I think Waynette is going to present that proclamation to us. Or Carla, whichever one of you chooses. If Carla has practiced, let's go with Carla.
Oh, it gives me great pleasure to read the proclamation for the Week of the Young Child. Whereas the Early Childhood Foundation of Cabarrus County, along with the Cabarrus Partnership for Children, in conjunction with the North Carolina Association for the Education of Young Children, NCAEYC, and the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NAEYC, are celebrating the Week of the Young Child, April the 2nd through the 8th, 2022, and the Month of the Young Child throughout April. And whereas these organizations are working to promote and inspire high-quality early childhood experiences for our state's youngest citizens that can provide a foundation of learning and success for children in Cabarrus County, and whereas teachers and others who work with or on behalf of young children birth through age 8 who make a difference in the lives of young children in Cabarrus County deserve thanks and recognition. And whereas public policies that support early learning for all young children are crucial to young children's future and to the prosperity of our society, now be it proclaimed that Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners for Cabarrus County, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April the 2nd through 8th, 2022 as Week of the Young Child in Cabarrus County, and encourage all citizens to work to support and invest in early childhood in Cabarrus County.
Thank you very much. And Commissioners, as you see, we are already into that week.
Yes.
So if it pleases the board, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules so that we can adopt this proclamation tonight. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and at this time, I would entertain a motion that we adopt the proclamation for the Week of the Young Child as was presented. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That is unanimous that we adopt that proclamation. And thank you both for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.1 from Active Living and Parks, Senior Center Grants. We're happy to have Byron Hagler with us to present that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I come before you today requesting consideration for approval of a budget amendment for 2 grant accounts that we received with the Active Living and Parks, specifically of the senior centers. The Senior Center General Purpose Funds are utilized across the state for senior centers to provide services, we we request those funds and utilize those to provide free programs and classes and events that we highlight throughout Older Americans Month, craft classes and things like that that we can provide at a free cost to our participants. And the requested budget amendment for that is just the approval of that state budget. Those funds are allotted to every senior center based on size, based on location. And so there are new senior centers that are built or some that may go away, so that amount changes as their budget is approved. And so that small amount adjustment is just to showcase that reimbursement amount for that. The other account is the Health Promotion and Disease Prevention account. And so that grant is to provide health-based programming classes that you may have heard of: Matter of Balance, Living Healthy with Diabetes, Living Healthy with Chronic Illness, or Chronic Pain, excuse me. And so those are provided at a free cost as well. And so the adjustment to that specific grant is that they increase the reimbursement rate for the number of classes provided. And so that budget amendment is showcased there. The county provides 8 classes this year, and so that adjustment is that additional reimbursement and expense for those classes that we provide. Can I help answer any questions or anything along those?
So if I read this correctly, that's about $5,200 in additional funds that will come to the senior center for those purposes.
That is correct, yes, sir.
I would have a hard time complaining about that. Any questions for Byron? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next item is appointments to boards and committees, and you all have a list of those before you that you've also received earlier in the week. Does anyone have any questions or comments? If not, we will move to the next item, which is a resolution dissolving an advisory board, and County Manager Mike Downs will handle that item.
Back in, excuse me, 2015, the board created the Animal Protection Advisory Board. And this is at a time when we were actually contracting with the Humane Society as an independent function. They were manning our shelter. And there was a lot of conversation between the Humane Society and then others that used the shelter. So we thought there was a need for an outside board to, or an independent board to help set policy out there. Since then, the Humane Society is no longer running the facility. The Sheriff's Department does that now. So they have a lot of internal functions that they do. They feel comfortable that they don't need. However, they will take the input from the public, just as the sheriff will take with any other things that he does. So instead of having an organized board, they think that they're capable of doing it themselves and still do a good job. The other thing is that the interest for the board itself, it was starting to wane a bit too. So we were having a hard time getting enough people to even have the meeting. So we were missing meetings, we were skipping 2 or 3 meetings, and then the next meeting, maybe one person would show up or 2 people. But I think it was just a loss of interest since the Sheriff's Department took it over and they were doing the bulk of the activity out there. But as always, if somebody, whether it's a past member of that or anybody in the public that wants the sheriff is always, and his staff are always willing to sit down and talk to them about any concerns that they have out there. So it's our recommendation that you would dissolve the formal committee that has been in place.
Okay, any questions about that item?
Yeah, I guess
I'll say as the formal liaison to that board, it has, we have rarely met since the sheriff took it over, and this is the way to go. And certainly, we still get feedback from the public when they have questions, and the sheriff is responsive, and the county manager is as well when those questions come in.
Yeah, Lauren reached out to the individuals that were still on the roster with limited or no response. So.
Well, and this, like any other item, we can always revisit it should circumstances change in the future. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we will move to item 4.4 from Department of Human Services, Transportation, Drug, and Alcohol Policy, and we're happy to have Charles Ratliff with us for that item, along with Bob Bushy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. As part of the safety system plan, the Federal Transit Agency requires us to have a drug and alcohol policy. Because of the special requirements for transportation, we have a separate appendix from the county policy. The policy covers random post-accident testing, as well as collection site requirements. The policy will have to be adopted and signed separate from the safety system plan.
Okay, any questions on that item, commissioners?
Any changes from the previous?
There was a few changes. They took a few words out, and then on the last page, they added substance abuse professional number 2, just added a second contact there.
And these are federal,
Yes, sir.
federal regulations that require us to do this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll move to item 4.5, and this is Transportation Federal Transit Administration Resolution.
Thank you. The Cabarrus County is classified by the Federal Transit Administration as a large urban area. Our urban zone consists of the City of Concord, Cabarrus County, Rowan County, and the City of Salisbury. Up until recently, North Carolina DOT administered our federal grants for 5307 funds for the counties. Recently, they have decided they do not want to do that anymore. So all the counties, including Cabarrus, are now going through the process to be set up with the FTA to apply directly to them for funds. Part of that process is the resolution before you, authorizing the county manager in Cabarrus County to apply directly for those funds.
What are the 5307 funds? What do they go for?
Now we can use them for anything, operating or capital.
Any explanation as to why the state of North Carolina decided to cease to do this?
It's more than they can handle.
I was gonna say, it's probably an administrative nightmare
Right.
of the details and.
I mean,
That's why we would like for them to continue doing it. Let them have the nightmare. Okay, any questions, commissioners? All right, then we will move to item 4.6, Transportation System Safety Plan.
The North Carolina Department of Transportation requires each transit system in the state to create and maintain a system safety plan. DOT audits each system every 3 years for compliance. The audit looks at safety, security practices, and policies, such as driver training, vehicle maintenance, drug testing. Cabarrus County was audited this year, February and March, and requires the board to adopt and sign the new policy.
The results of the audit?
It's good. We got everything back. He said it's good to go, waiting on signatures.
Okay.
We didn't have any changes to make or updates?
No.
Most of the updates we had to make were personnel. We had some staff changes.
Okay, any other questions? It's pretty long, takes a while to scroll through it. A lot of detail. Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you, gentlemen. We will move to item 4.7 from Finance, American Rescue Plan Act funds for broadband and nonprofits. And we welcome Wendy Hagler for that item.
Good afternoon. So the first agenda item is, along with unallocated funds, and there's a couple of nonprofits that decided not to participate in or accept their American Rescue Plan fund dollars. We're proposing, or the budget amendment will allow $2 million to be spent for broadband, an additional $500,000 for Habitat for Humanity to allocate funds for critical home repairs. Education Foundation, $164,090, and this will fund a pilot reading and mentoring for success program to address learning loss, and Conflict Resolution Center, $21,361 to address lost revenue resulting from the pandemic. I'm glad to answer any questions.
I was just going to add one item real quick on broadband. That is a new program that the state established as part of the budget. So it's called the Completing Access to Broadband Program, and it's available to all 100 counties. And it basically is a matching program. So the county would contribute about 35% of the project. The provider would contribute 30%, and the state would contribute the remaining 35%. And so this would set aside the funds to enable us to do a project in the underserved areas of the county, assuming that the state would work with us on that.
We have either met with or been approached by about every one of the carriers out there that would provide this kind of service. So if you vote and move it forward, then I'm sure Rodney and I and others will be sitting down with some of those folks to see which one is the best one to go with.
In the way the statute is written, this would go through a request for proposal process that the county would issue with the state's help. The providers would submit a proposal to us. It would go through a review process and then an award.
Do you have an example of what this might entail? Would this be running lines to an area that's currently not served, or?
It would be running fiber to provide service in areas that don't currently have it, or they currently have service that is deemed too slow.
Okay.
And you're getting out of my wheelhouse, so Todd is back there.
Yeah.
If anybody has any more technical question.
And Todd will be the third one sitting down with us to meet with all these companies.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure that there are probably citizens that may be watching this meeting that would say, oh, is this going to be a solution to a problem that I have?
The state set the thresholds for this, and they've put some maps out there, and we can bring this to you next month and show that to you. Most of the areas that I've seen are most in the eastern part of the county, so that Gold Hill area is definitely the underserved, and then it grows. That is the area that is in the most need, and then it moves west. So that area, the Irish Potato Road section, definitely has the areas of need and would be eligible for this. There's some step downs, what we consider to be broadband access in our area versus what they have access to out in those parts of the county. It definitely varies between the areas. So it's definitely the state has set that criteria though, so it's not something we can establish here at the county.
So from my own information, when you say broadband, that means more than just internet access.
It's a certain level of internet access. I believe that it's 25 megs up and down is what they're considering broadband at this point. And then that number moves throughout the years because it's
Right.
obviously, if you even do a speed test at your home today, things get faster and that goes from there. So, yeah, we can definitely bring you the deeper criteria as we get the RFP ready.
Great, thank you. Questions?
Yeah, quick question, was there any type of, the nonprofits that decided not to accept the funds, was there any sort of common occurrence of why they didn't, or was it just paperwork driven, or just some insight on that would be nice.
Yeah, the majority of it was the requirements related to this funding, because it's a federal source, are extensive, and a lot of nonprofits just aren't able to meet those requirements.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I figured.
Rodney, with the allocation of these funds, will that wrap up the remaining portion of the unallocated money?
So it will not. We'll still have a little bit over $1 million, I believe, to be allocated that will come to you at a future meeting. And then there's the likelihood of current awards, some of that money returning, depending on their ability to spend it in a timely manner, and then also to meet the requirements of their contract.
Well, I'm glad to see us be able to do this, because these are some areas that you know, if we had to do it on our own through general fund, we probably wouldn't be able to do it because it's out of the ordinary, but I'm glad to see us be able to do this, in particular, the Education Foundation, because those, that situation there with COVID affected the children's ability to learn, to get on pace with reading and in particularly reading. I think I was talking to one of my constituents, and she was telling me that in a couple of our schools, they were like 13% of where they should be. And so these funds will help them hopefully bring that up to where they ought to be. So I'm glad that we're able to do this, and I appreciate y'all working to get it funded.
Well, I think, just to echo what you're saying, to highlight the others, I think this a little over doubles the amount going to Habitat for Humanity. We hear so much discussion everywhere we go and all about the community about affordable housing and those type of issues, so hopefully that contribution will help there. The Conflict Resolution Center, and I think they have representatives here today as well, they do very important work in a number of areas, and particularly working with our youth and with our teen court programs, and so these are certainly worthwhile causes, and we're glad to be able to do this. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Next item is 4.8, also from Finance, American Rescue Plan Act funds for Cooperative Christian Ministry, and Wendy will handle that one as well.
So this is also with the American Rescue Plan funds. Cooperative Christian Ministries basically wants flexibility to include the Huddle Housing Community Project. This will provide safe homes and case management for individuals struggling on low fixed incomes. So they just are asking for, I guess, the flexibility to spend it on the Huddle Housing and the original allocation, which was for home ownership and critical repairs.
Just to clarify the last part, so the original allocation was for their homeless to housing project, which is to provide transitional housing for those that are experiencing homelessness. This is more of a longer term housing that they want to be able to use those funds for as well. So they will be able to use them for both projects.
And I think we've talked about this a bit in the past, but this particular project that they are proposing, I think they have had a citizen to step forward and to donate the property where that will be located. And once again, talking about affordable housing, this is a different approach, a new approach, where there is a common kitchen facility with smaller houses, and so once again, I think this is kind of an innovative approach, maybe that has been successful in other places. So I'm happy to see us be able to support that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, then we will move to item 4.9, appropriate insurance refund for ambulance repair. And I think we have Jimmy Lentz with us and Kyle Billifer as well.
Good evening. An ambulance was involved in an accident on October 23rd, 2021. The chassis was totaled and the box was remounted to a new chassis. The insurance funds were received to cover the loss. But to move forward with the installation and the payment of that, we have to take the funds from the insurance fund and switch them to the general fund. So that's what the budget amendment is. And this is probably one of the first times I've been up here for EMS, but you'll see me up here for the Sheriff's Department when we lose a vehicle and we have to do this. We're not allowed to purchase new vehicles from the insurance fund. We need to switch those funds to the general fund. If you have any questions about the actual accident or the chassis or the remount, Jimmy Lentz is here to speak to that.
Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, like Kyle just mentioned, I can remember some sheriff's vehicles. The whole time I've been on the board, I don't remember an ambulance being in an accident.
Knock on wood for saying that. We have been very fortunate with very few of these situations. So, yeah, we are,
I mean, accidents happen,
They do.
we know that, but
Right.
I think,
and fortunately, this was a non-injury accident too, so
Good.
it was as good of as a bad situation could be.
Okay. Any other questions on that item? Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we call Wendy back up for debt refunding of limited obligation bonds.
So last meeting, we had our public hearing, and this is basically making our first draw program permanent debt. So we need a motion to adopt the resolution approving refinancing of our prior installment financing contract, financing an aggregate principal amount up to $130 million, the execution and delivery by the Cabarrus County Development Corporation of one or more series of limited obligation bonds related thereto, authorizing the execution and delivery of related documents in connection therewith, and providing for certain other related matters. And our bond counsel wrote that. I wanted to read it, make sure we had everything in there. So there's a resolution, a deed of trust, a trust indenture, and an installment financing contract all attached.
And what are these funds for?
So this will make our first draw program, which the majority of it was the courthouse and the new middle school.
And I did want to provide an update. So as you recall, we've talked in the past about our desire to do a 30-year term for the courthouse debt. Despite our best efforts, we were unsuccessful at persuading the local government commission to allow that. And so this would be a 20-year term. We will talk to you hopefully after we get approval about some next steps we think might be warranted related to the LGC.
And if I'm correct, that's going to result in the delay of about $12 million in future projects that we would have been able to go forward with had they granted us permission for that 30-year term.
Yes, that is the likelihood, unless our sales tax revenues come in above budget and unless we spend slower on projects than we anticipate. We will lose about $12 million of capacity.
Wendy, we talked earlier before the meeting about the 115 million. Is that part of this 130?
So that is the maximum amount, but it'll be 115 million or less. Because right now we've drawn down around $100 million. So there'll be the $100 million plus the fees that we'll have to pay to do the refinancing or refunding.
Okay, thank you.
And as Rodney mentioned, we will have some future conversations about this, but I think it's important for the public to understand that the issue that we're talking about here is the local government commission in Raleigh has made the determination that they think 20 years is an appropriate amount, linked term for a government to finance a project. I think that as they have abided by that, and it's not really a rule, it's more of a policy that they've established in-house that's not dictated by statute at all.
That's right, unwritten policy.
Yes.
Unwritten policy. And my position on that has been that Cabarrus County and a number of other rapid growing counties in the state of North Carolina are under different circumstances than a lot of the counties that are struggling to meet their obligations. And so I think that those circumstances dictate, we're building a facility to accommodate a population that we think will serve within 30 years 400,000 residents of Cabarrus County. And we expect that facility to continue to serve those citizens for 75 years or longer. And so 30-year financing on that is not unreasonable at all. I think when you look at the number of individuals that may have a 30-year mortgage on their private residence, That's not unreasonable at all. So that's where we may need some assistance from this entire board to try to get that message across to our elected officials in Raleigh so that they can be our voice to try to institute some change. I certainly understand caution, and I think that is a wise thing. We never want to be overextended, but under this circumstance, I don't think that really applies. So that's just my own little personal soapbox, but I'm sure that we will talk about it. And it does impact what we're able to do, as I think all of you are totally aware of the demands that are made upon the county trying to keep up with school construction and student growth and population growth. And so that's a bit unique, and you know, you're probably tired of hearing me say, but Cabarrus County was the third fastest growing county in the state in this last census. So with that comes, you know, I think somebody from our library staff has taught me to say, I said that was a blessing and a curse, but they said I should say a blessing and a challenge, and I agree. That probably is a better way to say it. But this is a perfect example of one of those challenges that I think we're going to have to step up and work on.
Well, another thing to consider too is when you think about the cost of schools now, being particularly high schools, if you're looking at 130 million for a courthouse, and then they don't want to give us 30-year financing on upwards of 75-year building. Well, we're going to be facing the same thing basically with high schools, because my latest projections, I think county manager said that we sort of put a placeholder for the next high school, 120 million. And, you know, so we're going to have some talks with some people that can make a difference in Raleigh to get this method of financing, you know, different. The only good thing about that is we will pay less interest. But on the other hand, though, it cuts us short on doing other projects because we're having to spend so much money because of a shorter term. So I for one, think that we really need to, you know, put some pressure on our local delegation to try to act on behalf of counties such as Cabarrus, being as fast growing as we are, and make some type of provisions for us. I just wonder, out of curiosity, what would it take to get 30-year financing? I mean, will they give us any examples? How much you gotta spend?
The answer that I would give, and I'll certainly defer to Rodney and Rich if they have a different one or additional ones, is the staff in the North Carolina Treasurer's Office has an unwritten policy that they will recommend nothing over 20 years. Now, there may be some circumstances that may go 22, 23 years, but basically close to 20. The actual decision is made by the appointed local government commission. I know that the governor makes a majority of those appointments. Maybe the league has an appointment, or the NCACC, I'm not sure. But it is actually that board that makes the decision on all of those items, and with recommendation from staff. And so I think that it probably is unlikely that board would go against the recommendation of staff unless there was considerable amount of work that was done in advance. And I think we've gotten to the point that if we choose to continue to pursue the 30 years, at the next meeting of the local government commission, we can choose to do that. But if they deny that request, then we have to go back and start all over again, which doesn't work with our financing plan. Did I get that right, Rodney?
Yeah, so they were not willing to make it easy for us. So they would allow us the opportunity to make our case on May 3rd, and if that was unsuccessful, we would have to return to them in June or July, which in this market, with all the volatility, we just don't think that's in the best interest of the county. And so we think a longer-term fight is warranted, but this short term, we just accept 20 years and move on. To Commissioner Shu's point, I think, to the numbers, I think we ran the numbers on the difference between 20 years and 30 years from an interest perspective. It was about $3.5 million more for that additional 10-year term. If you delay a high school project for 2 to 3 years, you're talking about $18 or $20 million of construction inflation. We made all of those arguments to their staff, and they just were unwilling to change.
Yeah, we've been arguing with them for about 25 years now on this same issue, and, you know, it's one thing 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we weren't growing as fast, but now we're growing fast. I mean, if it was just one school that we're gonna build in 10 years, hey, you know, that's fine. But when the projects are starting to stack back up again, both as a timing but then cost, it just doesn't make sense. And so we will continue to advocate.
And then to Chairman Morris's point about terms, if you have a water and sewer function, you can get 30 years for any water or sewer project. If you have an enterprise fund, so if you have a Convention and Visitors Bureau and you want to build a convention center, you can get 30 years. If you are a lower wealth or rural locale, you can get 40 years from the USDA for a courthouse, a school, any other project you want to do. But for us, 20 years is the max that we are currently allowed to go, which we don't think is equitable.
And I will say that our local delegation is aware of this and has been helpful in the discussion. I think probably we will be leaning on them a little bit heavier to be prepared for the next time the issue arises. Any other questions on that item? If not, we will move to item 4.11, Fire District Property Tax Budget Amendment, and Wendy will handle that one as well.
So this is a budget amendment to increase the revenues for property taxes. Fortunately, they are coming in over budget. And then on the other side, budgeting those expenditures to the fire departments to turn that increased property tax over.
So were there any of the fire districts that did not have an increased amount?
No, because they're all, I guess, the same property tax. So it's all the,
Right.
there's an increase in all of them, yes.
Okay, any questions on that item? If not, we will move to item 4.12, resolution approving installment financing contract, and Wendy will handle that one also.
So this is for our new draw program, and it'll be up to $160 million. It's, so we're requesting that you approve the resolution approving the installment financing contract, and that's 2022B, our drawdown program. We had the public hearing on that at our last meeting, March 21st, and so Cabarrus County plans to enter into one or more of our short or long-term installment financing contracts, including the use of a drawdown loan structure with the Cabarrus County Development Corporation or one or more third parties for amount not to exceed $160 million to finance all or portions of the cost of constructing and equipping public school and county facilities and various real and personal property improvements. And like I said, the public hearing's already been held on March 21st. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Wendy on that item?
I did just want to point out for the public, those watching, this is primarily the courthouse again. So that's about 67 million of this total, but it's also the EMS headquarters, the Mount Pleasant Library Senior Center that's going in that northeast part of the county, and then some other projects, including roof replacements for the school system.
Okay, any questions? All right, then we will move to item 4.13, Roberta Road Middle School Road Improvements. And on my agenda, it says Wendy and Brain
Oh, sorry.
Cone. So that's a pretty high expectation.
Mine says Brian.
Oh, well, not mine.
I get that quite often.
So this is for the Roberta Road Middle School road improvements that came over budget. The costs are reimbursable by the state, so we are increasing the revenue and expenditure by $800,000 to cover the cost. And I'll let Brian answer any questions that you may have or explain.
And do
I
you
just
want
said-
me to give you a little backstory on the project as a whole?
Well, no, I
or-
kind of, the last I remember, we weren't quite sure what the final outcome was going to be.
Well,
We were-
so, just a real short backstory, 2019, late 2019, 2020 is when we established the original budget for the road improvements, and we were basing that off of the previous jobs of Weddington Road and Hickory Ridge Road, which at that time, we felt like we were fairly well covered. But then the pandemic happened, and we received bids on March 9th of this year, and we're considerably over that budget. You know, these requests are always difficult to have, but in this situation, with the reimbursement policies in place through the state, you know, these funds are 100% reimbursable with what we spend on the improvements, whether it's on DOT's request or at the City of Concord's request. So we immediately, once we opened bids and knew that we were over budget, had that meeting with DOT and began value engineering and reducing the scope to overall reduce the cost of the project, which we have done. I think it's worth saying to the public that NCDOT has been very generous, and City of Concord as well, in allowing us to reduce scope to try to get closer to what would be a more realistic budget, we think, on what the improvements have. So we to date have removed about $700,000 out of the project, so.
Brent, the change in scope from the value engineering is still going to be sufficient to?
So
handle the
that was
traffic?
part of the conversations, you know, the intent is to reduce the scope and not impact the design and the safety of the improvements themselves, which we were able to do.
Maybe that's my recollection, was that you didn't have quite final design yet because you were still negotiating. So,
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm with you now.
And they are making prompt reimbursements?
They have been
Currently?
making prompt reimbursements, I would say, in regards to it coming from the state level, yes.
Yeah.
We have received reimbursements for both Hickory Ridge Road and Weddington Road, as well as most recently, City of Concord provided their portion of the reimbursement for Weddington Road too, so.
I think that was a nice way of saying depends on your definition of prompt.
I think,
I know there was a period of time where that was not happening.
yeah, I don't have any history with that, obviously, in my private sector days, but from what I gather, I mean, in less than 6 months, we've received full reimbursement, so. And we're handing those checks right back over to Wendy and Rodney, so.
Excellent. Any other questions for Brian? All right, thank you.
Oh, well, we did have to suspend the rules. I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. Yes.
Because of how we're having to handle this with our board, I did ask if it would be possible to suspend the rules to take action on this item tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules to act on this item tonight. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And I would now entertain a motion, and I can't find the right page, if somebody has it there. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we move now to item 4.14 from the Fire Marshal's Office, Ordinance Approval. We're happy to have Jacob Thompson and Steve Langer with us.
Good evening, Commissioners. What we have before you is a request to approve the proposed fire district ordinance. This is kind of the last step in the process for finalizing the fire district boundary changes that were brought before you last month. So we forwarded the map information to OSFM as requested. The state has come back and they have reviewed the maps, and there's no additional information that they need for us to move forward. So at this time, we're just asking that the board approve the proposed fire district ordinance. There's also a map attached to that ordinance that depicts the fire district boundaries that were proposed. And then happy to answer any questions.
And so these are all the changes that we held the public hearing for and approved at our last regular meeting.
Yes, sir.
Steve,
Questions?
Yeah, I do have a question, Steve. You know, this, when we do this, it's obviously having a negative effect on some of the fire departments. I'm assuming that you're working with staff to come up with something to try to alleviate some of the pressure or the loss from the fire departments that had losses.
Yes, sir. And actually, Jacob has had several conversations with the Flourishville Fire Department chief, and actually met with them today to go over their budget and make some recommendations from things that we have seen through their past budget as well as their financial statement to help the department.
Well, obviously, they were the one that was hit the hardest because of this, and likely so because of the way the former district was. But now that this is in place, I think it becomes what, effective July the 1st, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then, but they took a heavy hit on it. And so obviously there'll have to be some changes. But to me, now, you guys may have heard from other fire departments, but I didn't really get any negative input from anybody other than the flow store. And for obvious reasons, you know, half of their budget gone, you know. But anyway, I appreciate all the work that you're doing on that to try to help alleviate some of the pressure on that fire department, because it's been around a long time, good community fire department, bunch of good guys down there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.15 from Infrastructure and Asset Management, Courthouse Expansion Public Art Award. And we're happy to have Kyle Billifer back for that item.
Thank you very much. So kind of want to walk you through the historical process, as tonight is the night we're getting ready to present the chosen finalist from the Public Art Committee for the public lobby of the courthouse. The county received 77 public art requests for qualification submittals on December 20th, 2021. After several months of evaluation and interviews, the Public Art Selection Committee decided on 3 finalists who provided a proposal and a 60-minute interview for the project. Those interviews took place during the last week of March 2022, and staff will present the committee's selected finalist for the Courthouse Expansion Public Art, it's misspelling, Art Award. And I believe that the proposal is attached. And has the board had the time to see that in advance? Okay, great. So Norman Lee was the chosen artist, the finalist. And if we could bring up his proposal. Yeah, it's not this attachment. This is the RFQ, so it would have been the second attachment that I sent to Angela. Okay. There you go. You just go back 2 screens. So I would, that's all right. So I would urge all of you to definitely read through the proposal if you have not yet. It does go in a lot of detail about the actual specific construction and installation, but it also goes through a very in-depth narrative and concept of why Norman and his team chose the direction that they're going. And the direction is scrolls, and playing off the fact that scrolls evoke learning and knowledge, and that justice demands that we continue to learn as our life unfolds. And it goes through a lot of the presentation that's here, especially the last page, really has the detailed narrative of how they dug down into that concept to provide kind of the look of what they're presenting, which is in fact hanging steel rods and steel wires that are wrapped around and painted in different colors and will kind of provide a luster as the different sunlight and artificial light hits it. And it'll be in a true scroll or serpentine technique. And out of the three finalists that we saw, we felt that this very much spoke to kind of the textured. Yeah, that's a pretty good image of it right there. If you actually go down one more, please. Yeah, that kind of shows you an idea of it hang there. It really spoke to the texture of justice and kind of not only what the justice system represents and how it's ever changing, but also the texture and the weaving of the different downtown facades that we tried to do in the courthouse, which if most of you were on the board when we brought the actual exterior concept for the actual building, and that was a lot of talk about the texture and the weaving of the different architecture and different colors that were presented in the buildings downtown. And Norman really kind of latched onto that and ran with that. And obviously, from a maintenance standpoint, the materials or the selections and how it was going to hang, meaning the weight of it, the structure, all met our needs precisely, actually, when it came down to it, which we were very narrow and not so relaxed on what we were going to require and how it would be affixed in there. A couple quotes that I wanted to take out of his proposal, just to kind of give him, not to be a pun, but to do him justice in terms of the proposal he put together, was the gesture of unfurling a scroll represents how the law is embodied by people and that justice requires personal action. And it really spoke to the different committee members that we had. Two of our board members are obviously on the Board of Commissioners, and then we also have two, Noel and Sarah. Sarah's from the city of Concord, and Noel, just as you know, retired from our Arts Council. And we also had several others, including folks from the actual courthouse. And this proposal really spoke to them in terms of integrating the history of Cabarrus County, but also playing and integrating the history of justice and where justice is going, both not just on serving justice in the courthouse, but social justice and other things that we're affected by every single day. And this artist and his team were very in tune with that. And I can answer any questions about kind of the history of how this project started or what the reviews, how they took place, or the team meetings, or anything that the board wants to hear.
Well, I'll start it off just for a minute or two. Kyle, I was so impressed with his work. I didn't get to do the others I had a doctor's appointment and all that mess, and so I didn't get to do the other two, but I was sold on this one when I first seen him. I mean, this guy really knows what he's doing, and he could put his expression in this, and I think that actually these pictures probably won't do it justice when the time comes and we literally see it across the street. And I enjoyed being a part of the committee, and Kyle, my hat's off to you. I don't know how you do it. He's like a magician, I'm telling you. I don't know how he does all this stuff, but he does. They've done a great job. And Sarah, it was nice meeting you and working with you, Noel, as well, and then, of course, Blake. But I enjoyed the input from all of the members that's on the committee, and I think we probably couldn't have made a better choice. And so my hat's off to you, and thank you all, ladies, for helping us get this done, and I just can't wait to see it get put up so we can look at it.
I was just, Kyle, the architects were represented on this committee too as well?
Yes, we had the principal, Jody Driggs from Silling, was on there. In addition, we had Betty Stocks from City Council, former law enforcement. I believe she was actually on our committee before she was on the City Council. And then obviously Noel and Sarah, and then we had Judge Wilhelm also.
So the architects are comfortable that it is, I think you mentioned it earlier, just wanted to reinforce it, that they felt comfortable that it was with part of their original design and their thoughts of how the building would flow as well.
Myself and the architect spent in excess of 12 hours going through all AutoCAD and Revit prints and providing those to all the three finalists, everything from sprinkler head to security cameras to the actual structural beams that are up there. And there's already a meeting planned for Thursday of this week with whoever the finalist is, if the board approves tonight, to have a 2-hour meeting with myself and 14 engineers to go through that. So yes, there will have to be some minor modifications made. Specifically, the actual way to mount it needs to be installed in the next 2.5 months so that we can close up that ceiling, and then the art can come back and be put in after everything is finished. So the artwork will be installed after the final flooring, the final walls, and everything like that, but the actual way to connect it, so just imagine structural wires, because that's essentially what they are, those will be all put in place before then, and we'll have to coordinate those around air conditioning, fire sprinklers, plumbing, lighting, security cameras, and the actual wooden slats that are shown. That's actual wooden slat roof. So it's a little bit more difficult than a needle and a stack of needles, but it will come together.
Kyle, I wanted to say one more thing too. Well, actually, two things. We had a 600-pound weight limit.
Yes,
And
sir.
I think he come in just a few pounds less than that, really. And how he could do that, there's 450 of those strands all the way around that thing. But one of the things that I thought was significant, and you'll have to talk about this, Kyle, just for a minute, was some of this guy's credentials.
Yes.
From the, his credentials. It speaks loudly for this project.
Yeah, well, Norman was a finalist for the 9/11 memorial in New York City, and he's done a lot of. They break them up when you kind of get into the public art world. They have public art and then they have memorials. So a couple of them that he's done is he's done the Fallen Five Monument in Tennessee for the different military group that had an accident in one of the bases in Chattanooga. He did actually put together and is in place in Cornelius, the Never Forget 9/11 monument. That's him. He did the Tsunami Memorial in Thailand. And then in terms of not memorials, but also the lyrical journey in the Nashville airport. So I would urge you to go to his website. His story and his team's story is quite compelling, but they seem to be, they gravitate towards different type of public projects that kind of focus on, I wouldn't say loss, but on honoring and remembering. And it's very impressive, as is he.
Kyle, it would be good also that, people like that would be hard to pin down. But it would be nice, though, if we could have some type of a artwork dedication and have him here for that for one of our board meetings. You think you could pull that off?
I'm sure I can put it on my list, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, I just wanted to add, it was truly an honor to be on the committee. One of the benefits of sitting on this board is sometimes you get to participate in things and do things that sort of broaden your horizons. I'm not a creative person, but to be able to go through and see how the process works and interview the artists and have them tell you how they got from point A all the way through to point B to their inspiration was just a really neat thing for me to be a part of. And this gentleman was incredibly impressive. We had some good discussion about all the finalists. I mean, his cream sort of rose to the top, but we still did give the others a fair shake and a good conversation. But at the end, I think it was pretty obvious that this was the best choice for us. And if either Noel or Sarah would like to, you're here, we appreciate the support. If there's something you would like to say, I for one would like to hear from you, because you offered a lot of good insight and a lot of good direction, and it was a pleasure to work with you both.
Thank you, Commissioners. Should I go ahead?
Go right ahead.
It was a great pleasure to work with all of you as well, and testament to Kyle, because his project management skills are exceptional, and learning skills. I think this is your first public art project.
That's correct.
I've been in the field of public art management since 2001. I've worked in 3 different city government programs, and I have no problem handing this off to Kyle. I mean, he's done the majority of the work already. But I wanted to go back to Mr. Down's question about whether the architect is comfortable, because in a lot of cases, you do see architects resistant to the idea of an additional piece that is monumental in scale added to their building. And in this case, I would hazard a guess to say that Jody is extremely enthusiastic.
Yes,
And I'm hoping his entire firm with him.
they are.
So we all understand that this may not be the exact palette of colors that this piece ends up being. But they've built into their proposal a stage for community engagement where they will come and enlist Cabarrus County residents to give their input on what they believe different patterns and colors might be appropriate. And part of the inspiration, along with scrolls that Norman told us about for this project, was quilts, and quilting and textiles being a very important part of our history in Cabarrus County. To go all the way back to the beginning of the project, one of the things that we did as a panel was to come up with certain key words that were important for the artist to understand and try to express. And one of those words was equity. Judge Wilhelm wrote a beautiful synopsis of what goes on in the courthouse and the reasons that that idea of fairness and equity is important. That was also very important to Betty Stocks with her background in law enforcement. And as an African-American resident of Cabarrus County as well. And so one of the things that impressed us was Mr. Lee and his team's very sensitive understanding of those concepts and those issues in any community, and the way that they get at them is to bring the community in and participate in building up the idea that is behind the artwork. So he's already looked at examples of quilts that are sort of native to the area, and that's where he came up with these sort of rectilinear grids of color, was directly from some images of quilts. But he'll be spending some time gathering some more input on colors and exact patterning. So I just wanted to assure you, the architect is very excited about this. And that's nice to see.
I don't have a whole lot to add, but it is so exciting to be at this point with Cabarrus County and this new courthouse and with everything that's going on in downtown. As most of you all know, I've been involved in the arts here for quite a long time, and to be at this point, and it was such a pleasure to work with this entire committee. As was brought out, not everybody was an art expert, but that's not the point of public art. It's got to be there so that everybody can appreciate it. So it's extremely important to have all these different points of view. And for Kyle and Sarah to have worked together very closely before we ever all met together, and to get keywords and phrases that were important. And again, to go back to Christy Wilhelm and Betty Stocks, who really understand the frame of mind that a lot of people are in when they walk through those doors. They're not just coming in to say hello to Mr. Downs or to deliver a grant application. It's, often for, things that they're very stressed about. And so that was a very important part of this too, was to be something that would be interesting for people to look at, that would have symbolism that some people will get and some people will not get. There will be a plaque that kind of explains what the point is, but that it looks different from every angle. And then at night, with these beautiful glass windows, it will take on another aspect. So whether it's somebody walking by, whether it's somebody walking through the doors that's, having not the best day of their lives, it will hopefully really speak to them. And I just commend all of you all for making the decision to invest funds in something that will definitely be worth every penny you have spent, because of what it will do that people won't even realize that it's doing. It will set an atmosphere there. So thank you all for your progressive point of view. Thanks especially to Sarah and to Kyle and to everybody who was on that committee. It was really a wonderful, wonderful experience for me.
I would just add that, to your point, I think there's something here for everyone, whether you just want to walk in and look at it and take it for what it is, or whether you want to truly understand the history behind it. I think it'll meet all those needs, and if it's this pretty on the screen, I can't wait to see it in person in that area with the light coming in and everything that will be there. So again, thank you guys for your hard work on the committee, and Kyle, can't wait to see you get that thing up. And did you say a meeting with 14 engineers at one time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, have fun.
But not only that, he's got that plan, but unfortunately, the two finalists that it's on their calendar too. So he had to coordinate with all three because that's how time sensitive and how tight the schedule is. So, I think we tapped the brakes on the Kyle parade for a second, but no.
Thank you.
In all seriousness,
Please
there is a lot of coordination that will take place that he's gonna have to handle between now and the time that the art gets hung, and then we open the door and get down to business. So, yes, it was quite the undertaking, and I guess once we move forward, if it passes, you'll contact Mr. Lee, and then he's ready to go.
Yes, sir.
Could I say one last thing? For me, one last thing. I just want you all to know what I have recognized over the last year or two, working with Sarah Gay, not only on this project, but on the Concord Public Art Committee. We are very fortunate that we have somebody living and working in our community, well, not exactly living. Here you are, you did just move here, who has this expertise. So going forward with other projects that hopefully you will have, we've got somebody here who you can turn to.
I just briefly want to say thank you for all your input and all your help, and everybody on the committee. I think it's a wonderful collaboration of a beautiful piece of art that I can't wait to see.
I'll be glad to start the ball rolling by making a motion to suspend the rules of procedures due to the time constraints.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll just add a couple discussion points. I will be on, first of all, sincere appreciation to our two commissioners as well as the rest of you that have served on this committee. I am very, very pleased to not have been included in that number. I am not good at symbolism. I say a pencil looks like a pencil, but I'm trying. I did not see the scroll to start with, but now I do. And I did not see the quilt, but I can maybe put that in my imagination. I love the color palette, but just to let you know that I do pick up on some symbolism when I look at, and I don't think Sarah and I have ever met, but I know you by reputation. But when I look at you and I look at your blouse, all I can see is the Cabarrus County logo triangle in exactly the right color. So thank you for choosing such an appropriate attire to come to our meetings. We appreciate it. But really, y'all have done a tremendous job. I think about a lot of other questions, like how is Kyle going to dust that thing? But I know he's got that figured out, so I don't even want to hear the answer. But it really is impressive, and really do appreciate what you folks have contributed. And so we do have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And what would be your pleasure on this project? And I will leave that to go right ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the bid award and authorize the county manager to execute the contract between Cabarrus County and Norman Lee, subject to revision by the county attorney.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. And we will let the record show that that was a unanimous decision. So thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.16, Mount Pleasant Library Senior Center Park Complex update, and we're happy to have Kyle and Rodney for that item.
Okay, Lauren, could you bring up the site plan? Thank you so much. So both Rodney and I are here today to talk about the Mount Pleasant Library / Senior Center / Park Complex. And we're working on names, so we hope to come back to that. But for right now, that's what we'll call it. So we did engage with both engineers and architects to go through what we call a programming and an OPCC process. So that is programming and opinionated projected construction costs. So lack of a better way, we got everyone in a room, talked to them, asked what they needed, figured out how big it would need to be, what type of amenities, and then we sent it out to professional cost estimators to bring those costs back, and then factored in escalation, soft costs, things like that. So things like furniture, audio, visual, fitness equipment, things like that. And what we came back with was this plan based on the parcel that we did purchase, and kind of taking into effect or taking into consideration all of the different layouts for the amenities and the access to them is why we chose to put the fields and the buildings in certain areas. And obviously, this would all be flushed out in a true full-blown design. We do have some pretty good geotech on the site already. We did that as part of our due diligence when we were in the actual acquisition. And we have an idea of where we should put things based on those geotechnical results, as well as kind of the topography of the site. What we're looking for today is want to discuss some of the values of the different opinions of projected cost in terms of alternates and not having alternates. So what we had broken it up to is the building, which is the senior center and library, and all of the ball fields, the 3 ball fields that we're replacing for the town of Mount Pleasant, that if you remember, they were on that adjacent parcel next to the old middle school of Mount Pleasant. We looked at replacing all of that. So that is the base bid, is the actual library and senior center, and then the actual 3 ball fields and the parking lots associated with them. And then we also had our design team basically cost out what 2 additional multi-purpose fields, so not soccer fields, not football fields, not lacrosse fields, 2 multi-purpose fields. We had those cost estimated to see what those would cost and bring those numbers back. And so I'll turn it over to Rodney if you want to, okay, keep going. Okay, so what we were looking at for the cost of the base bid, option 1, so that's the 3 ball fields in the building, the associated parking lots, is plus or minus 24 million, and that includes soft costs and hard costs, everything put into it. And that does have escalation built into it. The option 2, which would be option 1 plus the additional multi-purpose fields, would be 26.5 million plus or minus. And both options would require additional funds to the existing CIP.
You guys sent the question out to the board already last week?
Yes, I provided the detail in an email last week, just so they would be aware of what those options are. And we can fit either of those options in the capital plan. I think the part Kyle didn't speak about that he may want to touch on is the operating expense. We do not anticipate this would be turned over to the town, the park component, immediately. And so there would be obviously operating impact of having the 3 ball fields. And then if we add the 2 additional multi-purpose fields, that adds additional operating expense.
Correct. So you're looking at your normal landscaping and mowing, you're looking at your field lighting, you're looking at your irrigation costs, so your utility cost, your operating cost, and then any damage to them, so going back and resodding, herbicides, fungicides, all those things that we do for those type of fields that we have at Franklin Park, which is the only place that we have athletic fields. So we don't have an athletic complex at Vietnam Veterans Park in Kannapolis, and we don't have one at Rob Wallace Park in Midland. So This would be, bringing on kind of a mini Franklin Park in terms of the ball fields. We have 4 of them at Franklin. We would have 3 here, and then the multi-purpose fields. And those would be an operating expense increase to the county.
So give me those two figures again.
For option 1, plus or minus 24 million. And for option 2, plus or minus 26.5 million.
Kyle, how big is the building piece, square footage wise?
It's about 21,000 square feet.
Yeah. I think it's actually 21.5 when it's all said. We're still flushing out some mechanical issues that might increase it a little
And I
bit.
believe the existing library is 4,000.
Not even, 37.6.
So how does that compare to the senior center size? Do you know?
Yeah, the senior center's just under 20 right now. It's in the
Okay.
16 or 17 range right now.
And with the 2 additional ball fields, if they weren't built at this time, which I personally think we should just bite the bullet and do it all at one time, but if we couldn't or didn't, I guess they could be added at a later date?
That's correct. We would just slightly grade the area so the water sheds and you would be able to come back and add those in. That's correct. And we'd have enough of the services upsized, meaning your electric and your irrigation would be able to be connected. We wouldn't put it all on the ground because obviously we wouldn't grade the ground for the fields. We would just grade the ground so that the water would flow off of it. But when they came back and grade, they would be able to make the extensions to those connections.
And I guess with a good thing on this, you don't have a building that's going to go up significantly over the next couple of years as far as raw land versus building a building. Like, how much is a field going to go up if it's 2 to 5 years down the road?
I see what you're saying, meaning the building materials cost. Yes,
Right.
it would be less. Really what you'd be looking at would be the cost of the lighting poles would probably be the only thing. But you're correct, meaning materials is going up higher than labor and faster than labor. So yes, from a construction standpoint, that is an accurate statement.
Okay, thank
Kyle, this is an excellent program. I've liked it from the first time I seen it. When you're looking at it now, I'm just wondering, with the multipurpose fields and the ball fields, along with the building itself, are we gonna have enough parking? Because it don't look like there's enough parking. I mean, it looks to me
So-
like that might be an issue.
That, we came up with that in the community engagement. So, I've gone down to North Drive on Saturdays and during their big games, and you get that flood that I call the changeover flood. So you're either picking up your child from playing, or, it's kind of that, I'm warming up, so you got a couple kids on the sideline, and it's that kind of, that transition. And yes, it will be tight during the transition. The option that I gave, because I dealt with a lot of the folks at the community engagement that said the same exact thing. And I said, if we want to get any more parking, you're going to lose a multipurpose field. And that's the reality of the situation. So I think as we go through our DD process, that is going to have to be some type of engagement that we have with the town and the different groups, and say, if that's where you want to go, that's your one option. Because there's nowhere else to squeeze things. If you look where we have our kind of our stormwater control measures, or our ponds and our different, we've tried to squeeze everything in, and we're trying to create that serpentine drive so that it takes some of the speed out of it, because we're going to have a bunch of children crossing, going to different areas, playing. So there's not a lot of room to carve to get much in there. I could probably carve an additional 20, maybe 30 spots, but I don't think that's what we're all talking about here. We're talking about can it handle the 300 at once?
I agree. Looking at the multipurpose field, the one that's to the left of the pond there, it looks to me like that could be turned and be a smaller, be a much smaller multipurpose field. Do they have to be a specific size?
That depends on which folks you're talking to at the community engagement and what they want to use it for.
Yeah.
So we've been approached by football and soccer. I was not approached by anybody with lacrosse, but I know that the football ones would. The soccer, you do have the option, if they wanted to do short-sided games, we could shrink that and provide more parking.
Well,
What we committed to, we collectively, was to replace the baseball field. So those are extra, those multipurpose fields. So they could be just green fields, and don't put any markings, don't put any goalposts, don't do anything. They can bring their cones with them and play to start with. You might want to, for the future though, you may want to go ahead and put some of the conduit in the ground for the lighting and that kind of stuff, to go ahead and put it in there for
I agree.
the future. But, so that would limit some of the the activity there during that. Or you could, you know, it depends on how you program it. If it's baseball night, then it's baseball night, then you don't use the other part of the park or that side, so I don't know.
Well, we all know how frustrating it is to go to an event and can't find a place to pitch.
Sure,
And,
yeah.
you know, and for
I
us
can tell-
to not take that into consideration.
Those
and make
fields
sure
were very attractive to the CSA, the soccer folks, and they even have a group down there, and, the same ones that used the Franklin Park, but those fields could, you know, they could be football, flag football, they could be soccer, they could be disc, or what's the disc?
Disc golf, sir.
Not disc golf, but football.
Ultimate Frisbee.
Ultimate Frisbee, it could be just any of those fields, flag football for little kids or adults, any of those things, so. If you program them too strictly, then they're gonna be limited as to what their scope of what they can be used for, so you wanna try to keep them as general as possible, so.
Sizes, so I remember the fields that we were replacing, and they were
225.
This size. So
225.
We're doing a 1-for-1, okay.
Yeah,
225.
What, Little League America is between 200, at least 200, and no more than 275.
Yeah.
For that
Once
age
you-
group.
Yeah, these are 12 and under, 13 would be bigger than that.
Yeah, so you've got fields
But is there
over at
any-
the middle school. You've built fields along with those schools over there, that's where they play,
Right,
the older
right.
kids play.
And this is just my own curiosity, and maybe we're making it to where it's the most flexibility possible, but it seems like, I mean, logically, to me, you would have one dedicated baseball, one dedicated softball, and then the other one would be the one you'd flop around, instead of making all three of them ones that, and I don't know if Londa has a comment on that or not, or just, no, and that's fine. We'll trust your judgment as you speak and talk it out in the community. That, just from a logic standpoint, to me, that seems a little illogical, but that's okay, that's just my opinion.
What the question was, to be able to play softball and baseball on the
Well,
same
just,
field?
if you have three fields, but they're all three that they can change from one to the other, well, then you're always chasing your tail on trying to get it situated for what you want it to be, instead of having, well, we know this is a baseball field, we know that one's a softball field, there's only one that you're having to chase, you know, and change from back and forth one to the other.
Yeah, I guess you could, the flexibility of using the fields, I don't know, because they're not grass infields, they're gonna be dirt infields, so.
But I mean, the fence, they put a temporary fence up for softball.
All three of
No.
those fields can be used by 12 and under, baseball and softball, as they're
Right.
set up. Bases are the same, distance for both, and the home plate, the pitching rubber could be a little different for the really small ones, but you can do that just with marking dust.
Yeah, but if you're 12, you were pitching off a mound.
They're the portable mounds.
They're portable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you had a dedicated baseball field, you build a nice mound that a kid gets to pitch on an actual mound. The other one, well, we pull it in, we take it off, you move it around, and then over here, that's a softball field. And then your lines, you keep your lines, whatever you need to do. Now, maybe there's less to it than, and I'm making more of it than it needs to be, but that to me is the more logical way to do it. If it's maximum flexibility we're after, then by all means, we won't do this short-sightedly, so.
What I have seen over the last 5 or 6 years is there are very few mounds on any fields. It's all portable mounds. And they're light enough now that you and I could carry one in.
So you know
Whereas before it
why the
took all of
pitchers
us.
get paid so much money? Because it's hard to train. No, I'm kidding. There are no mounds to pitch on.
That's right.
I'm kidding. No, I mean, I totally, I do understand what you mean for trying to get flexibility. Sometimes it's just nice to have where it's dedicated to what you're specifically trying to do, but that's, again, that's just my opinion.
So why would we not make these multi-purpose fields artificial turf?
I mean, our costs don't include the synthetic turf for those fields. We also have not turfed any of our other fields, so I didn't really look at the option of putting synthetic turf in a non-tournament field that we're not gonna have permanent staff down there all the time managing. I
So
felt that if.
what would be the maintenance cost over a year versus natural?
Much more minimal in terms of what you're putting into it. Would be your 10 or your 15-year replacement where your ROI would hurt you. I mean, they haven't even programmed out what they're gonna be using them for. So really, you try to do synthetic turf on your heavy use fields. It's not just to avoid maintenance, it's the heavy use, so you don't get the wear patterns and you don't have the turf replacement. So I mean, if you were going to ask me, why wouldn't you do it on these fields? I would probably tell you that we have other fields that would need it before that based on maintenance costs.
But the initial installation of the natural turf and the fertilizer and the maintenance and the watering and of course, we've learned now that you have to water the artificial turf for temperature
Heat,
control.
yes, unless you use a substrate that is much more expensive in
Yeah.
terms of not having to water it that much.
Yeah, and I asked that question because many of the conversations we've had in the past is that long-term, when you eliminate the chemical use, et cetera, that it's less expensive for an artificial turf field. Is that?
I think there's a return on investment. I think usage plays a big role in it. And without really knowing the usage of those two fields, we're calling them multi-purpose fields, so I couldn't really tell you the wear pattern and the usage on that. If somebody could kind of give me a list of a programming of how many hours they're going to see, I could better estimate that. At Franklin Park, we know how many hours are paid on each field and by what age bracket, and we use a certain, I'll call it a mathematic equation that NC State Turf Complex kind of came up with, and we tweaked it a little bit, but it's based on your average mean weight of your different age group, and then applying what type of activity they're doing on it. So the thought process behind the whole equation is that if you're practicing, you're not running as hard, and you're not trying to cut as hard and play as hard, but if you're playing in a tournament, you're actually cutting harder, working harder, because odds are, your standing is on the line. So it uses a higher multiplier for that, and then when we allow them to play after rain, which we typically have to based on the schedule at Franklin Park, your multiplier even goes up because you do more turf damage and more damage to the roots as your actual cleat bit cuts, and as you turn angles, you cut more of the root. So we use a higher multiplier on that. So if you ask me about Franklin, I could tell you really what you'll do by adding synthetic turf in terms of cutting down on the maintenance costs, but without knowing what the use of those fields are, I'm not sure that I can accurately portray that for the board.
What was the cost for the artificial for the baseball fields? Because we did have them give us an estimate for that.
The artificial turf for the 3 baseball fields was $600,000.
And that is or is not included?
It is not included in the option 2 that we brought you.
And that's for the baseball fields?
Correct.
Didn't have anything for the?
For the multipurpose, no, because
So-
they were optional in themselves.
So what would you estimate the cost of installing the natural turf on the baseball fields? And I understand if you say that that's difficult to break apart,
Yeah.
but I know there's.
I'd have to bring back the answer to
Yeah.
that board to give you that exact idea of, because a bulk of it is the grading, the cost is not, in terms of synthetic turf, your cost is not just your actual carpet or your turf. It's also the subgrade infrastructure that has to go in there to drain all the water. So that's.
Which is something that doesn't have to be redone once you do replace the turf,
As long as it
right?
has not been crushed, that is
Yeah.
correct. It will not have to be replaced as long as it has not been damaged or crushed.
So you guys have totally surprised me because you're asking more questions on the park than you are on the library senior center, so it's quite interesting.
Well, we haven't started on
Okay,
that yet.
okay, all right. Because that was a really exciting conversation between the two users that I thought was,
Mhm.
I thought they agreed much more, or much quicker than I thought they would. So, you don't have the floor plan, you're not ready to
So-
show that yet.
What's the overview on what they agreed on, when you say they agreed?
I think just the amount of space for one, they wanted to make sure they were getting there, but I think there's some shared common areas, but also just the presentation when you walk into the building and see how it all functions together. I think it's gonna be I think everybody's gonna be excited about it.
Which that really hadn't been done yet.
They're working on it.
Just in concept.
They're working, and Kyle and Londa and Emery are in conversation now, trying to figure out what that means, or what it looks like and how it flows, but I think everybody's gonna be excited about it. And then the other good thing about this is that the existing library, you have the ability to sell that. We have been having some conversations with some prospective users. And just remember, I think it was the Friends of the Library or somebody down there that actually purchased and built that and gave it over to the city or to the county. So we have the option of repurposing that to a privately owned commercial business or repurposing it for another county function to expand some of those services into the northeast area. Then I think that also the Friends of the Library they've raised 25,000?
25,000,
Close to
I think.
25,000 to help with this project as well.
And Noel, please feel free to grab your phone anytime you feel comfortable doing it. We may talk for a very long time, and we welcome you to stay and join us. But yeah, I think what you're talking about is an important point. The current library facility in Mount Pleasant was built at no expense to the county, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Well,
It
we have
predated me.
expended funds
Oh.
on it since that
Sure,
time.
to maintain.
Maintaining it, but the facility was built at no expense to the county and was gifted to the county to serve as a library. And I think it's also important that this library facility, I mean, if you want to look at the population of Mount Pleasant proper, the town limits, this library and this athletic complex is going to serve a much, much larger area of the county than just the city limits of Mount Pleasant. So they have made significant contributions to the library in that community. And I think it's important that we talk about that as we talk about trying to serve all areas of the county. And this would be the only facility that would serve the east side of the county for those purposes, right? Both senior.
That's correct, yeah, all the way to the Stanley County line and up to the Rowan County, in the northeast area.
Right, exactly. So I guess from a land mass objective is probably the largest chunk of the county that would be served by one facility. I won't put you on the line
Yeah.
on that one,
Thank
but
you.
I'm just visualizing the map of the county. And of course, that is probably the least densely populated area of the county as well. So from population numbers, that would be something to take into account as well.
I don't think we've run the numbers out there, but I just see some of the literature that they use sometimes when they're promoting things out there is that I think the town's 12 to 1,500, but the community is about 30,000 in that whole northeast part of the county.
Right. Right, so when you're talking about 30,000 people, I think the population of Kannapolis is 55,000, somewhere close thereabouts right now. Yeah, so from our perspective as Cabarrus County, that's what I think we need to look at more than an individual. city limit boundaries, because
Don't
that's
hold me
not who
to
we
those-
serve.
Don't hold me to those exact numbers. We'll look at
Right.
that. But I think I've seen some information come out of the town that, we're a
Well, yeah.
small town, but a big community. I think that's some of their quotes.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's part of the discussion also that we've had about the facility on the west side of the county as well. A very, very densely populated area that we currently are not serving with library and senior center. So, I think it's important for the public to understand that we're looking at the overall benefit of the entire county and the number of people that are served in these areas. And in this case, we're talking about a very broad age range of people that this would serve, from the athletic fields to the senior center as well.
I wanted to mention also, Commissioner Morris, that when I was on the active living in parks, and of course Londa's still here, we used to get reports, and I guess Ernie still does that, Londa?
He's off now.
Is he all? But Mount Pleasant, believe it or not, was one of the most used of all of our libraries and senior centers. And then, of course, like someone said about North Drive, it might have been Kyle, talking about North Drive now, when they have ball games, Mount Pleasant's a tight-knit community, and I think that by us doing this, you're gonna see that this facility will be used probably a whole lot more than what we've got's being used now. And so I'm just tickled to death that we're able to do something for those people, because they've done without for so long, and other parts of the county have too, but we're finally catching up, and it's a good thing to catch up. And so I'm just real glad for it. Will this double the size of what we got now
For the building
for the building?
and then some.
Double it plus some. Okay, well, that's good, because I think it'll be well used.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
that again, that's a combined facility, library and senior center that will more than double, so.
Yeah.
It should be noted that we're looking at retaining the current Mount Pleasant Senior Center, which is obviously leased from the town, to continue to run our Lunch Plus out
Okay.
of that site. Lunch Plus, the services provided by Lunch Plus would eat into our square footage in the actual senior center specific programming. And if Londa wants to speak on that, it affects their current operation now. And by being able to kind of separate that, we provide more room or more programming room for actual senior events versus just the Lunch Plus site.
Well, and if any, I mean, you mentioned the library usage numbers, and Emery and her staff have meticulous details. They can tell you how many people come in the door, how many people check out a book, how many people use online services for all of the branches. As a matter of fact, I think they probably have that in an online version now that anybody can access and take a look at, just to show how those facilities are used. And, while we're talking about facilities, and we talked about the Mount Pleasant, I think the county has experienced that same scenario. The city of Concord formerly operated that library, and when we consolidated services, they donated that building to the county. The city of Kannapolis, the construction of that library facility there was by, I think that David Murdoch was involved in that process, and there was also a fundraising effort among citizens. So that building was built and turned over to the county. And then in the town of Harrisburg, they constructed the building that we occupy there. And I think they retain ownership of that, but they provide it to the county at no charge for that building. So and then the town of Midland originally had proposed to build a town hall there, and the county had agreed to operate a library in that building. They I think had originally proposed in 2011, 2010, 2011, somewhere in that range. And so as we worked with them, since they had not constructed their town hall, they leased a space and we operate a library there. So even though they did not provide a building like the other municipalities, so we've continued to provide those library services countywide. And now as we're growing, those services are going to have to grow as well. I think we've been very, very thoughtful in trying to come up with a plan as to how we do that. And that will not stop. That will continue as our population continues to increase. But I think you were looking for some input. You're getting a lot of questions and not much input.
And I have two questions for you.
Sure.
On the senior center library, I know you said it's 21,000 square feet. What is the breakdown? How much is the library? How much is the senior center?
I'd have to go back at the programming and tell you that it's not a 50-50 split.
Okay.
But the actual conference areas or the assembly spaces will kind of make it look like a 50-50 split, is I guess what I'm trying to tell you. There'll be more office space for the library than there will for the senior center. But the assembly and programming space, the hope for that is that that's all reservable and able to be flip-flopped.
Okay.
But I can send you that breakdown.
And off the top of my head, I think it was around 10 to 11,000 square feet of dedicated library space, which is more than double what they
More than
currently
double.
have. And then about 6,000 or so square feet of dedicated senior center space. They have to have a minimum, I believe, of 3,500 square feet at the state level, so it's somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. And then Kyle, on the inclusive play area, that's 6,300 square feet, trying to
Yeah.
read this.
I think that's going to move, just FYI, but yes.
What is that again? Explain that to me.
Playground.
Playground, okay. I just wanted to make sure I was on that same page. I thought that's what you said, but
And
wanted to
I
make
think
sure.
that's going to move.
Okay.
And the town has made some substantial investments in their playground at Town Hall, and so we're being mindful of that as we move forward with this.
Okay. And I know you guys have had community meetings. How's the input from the community as a whole, not just, the partners within it? Are they positive about this or concerns, any
I
concerns?
think Kyle's probably heard, I think from what I heard, most of it was overall very positive. There was a couple of the family, or the folks that lived close in town there were concerned a little bit about traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
there were
that
some
was-
traffic concerns. That's
Yeah.
what we heard. And when we went, we had to rezone this, so Rodney and myself went to that, and we heard from one individual who was an alternate on the Planning and Zoning Board, had those same concerns about traffic. What we're providing and what we're putting there does not require a traffic input analysis. Yes, there are times that it will be busy based on exactly what I talked about, the time in and time out of those games. Whatever we would do, there's still only two ways to get there, so I'm not sure what we would do. We've worked close with the town, and that was the first question we asked the town is, are we required to make any traffic improvements at all? And the town assured us that we were not supposed to, we did not need to make any improvements. So we'll continue to work with them. In terms of what else we heard from a lot of, I mean, obviously you get your swimming pool, splash pad, things like that, equestrian trails. But in terms of the layout, I heard a lot about the parking, and I don't disagree, and that was a lot of my comments back, is there's only so much space. So you all tell me what's more important, if it's getting everybody there for the 3 ball fields to watch the games, then part of the multipurpose fields have to fade, something has to go. So, again, I think those are conversations that we'll continue to have.
Okay.
And the
So
town
I
is,
guess-
I was just
Go
gonna say,
ahead.
the town is exploring some traffic improvements. They're talking about making Walnut Street a one-way. And then I think they got a CMAQ grant to do an extension of North Washington to widen it and add some sidewalks. So,
That's really all I had heard from folks that I had know out there. They were concerned about the traffic as well. That's why I was just kind of curious if you had any overall glaring, really.
Really, it was just 1 or 2 individuals that made it. But again, the town hasn't been able to provide Rodney or I with exactly what they're doing, just that they're thinking about it and they're looking at it. And that was, when we met with their zoning board, that was exactly what came up from their zoning board and their staff that was there. But again, we're not being led to think that those improvements are on the county.
Okay.
So if we took away one of the multipurpose fields and turned it into a parking lot,
You'd be adding more asphalt, substrate, compaction, geotechnical testing, and you'd probably be a little bit higher than the number we gave you for option 2.
because of the stormwater and that
Yes,
sort of
it's
thing.
accurate.
What's a ballpark of how many spaces you would get out of that field? Any
That
ideas?
exactly what you take, look at what the lower parking lot right is there and orient it on one of those multipurpose fields, and that's probably what you're getting. In terms of ballpark, I can give you a count.
So it's about 157.
Yeah.
So right now, it's designed at about 362
Yep.
parking spaces.
So
About.
figure industry standard is, 140 to 148 spaces per 1 acre, depending on how you orient it and what type of landscaping buffers you need to have in there.
What did you just say? 140 spaces per acre?
Yeah.
Per what acre? For
Not
active?
required. That's how many parking spots you
Yeah,
can
how
fit
how
in an
you can
acre.
fit on, how many you can fit on.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think our parking lot's too small if it was 140 acres per acre of the site.
Yeah, 140 spots.
So I guess still talking about parking, if that has been a real problem for our library in Harrisburg. And I personally experienced it just 2 weeks ago, going over there on a beautiful afternoon, much like we had today, and every single parking space at the library was filled. And I ended up parking over at the athletic complex that the city has put in and walking across, which wasn't a big problem for me, could be a problem for other people.
I take it that's, everybody that was going to the splash pad is what you're saying, so they were parking in the library lot and going over to the new splash pads?
It appeared that way.
Yeah.
It appeared that there were more cars parked at the library than I found people in the library.
We hear that from staff often, since
Yeah.
they've opened that new part of their park.
So are we creating the same sort of an issue for the library here?
I think during the ball field games, we are. Luckily, we don't have a splash pad yet, so that won't be
Right.
all the time. But yes, during those game times, yes, we are.
Yeah.
And again, as County Manager Downs said, the promise that the board made was for those 3 ball fields. So I can go back to the engineers, and as we move forward, I can shrink the sizes of those fields or cut one of them and add more parking.
So if you took a half a field and added more parking, Londa, what could you program in the remaining, in a half of a soccer field? Volleyball courts or
Yeah, you could do the
something like that?
younger soccer as well.
Yeah, small, yeah.
But then if we took a half a field, we'd have to have a bigger retention pond. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, you'd be adding more stormwater. I'm not saying it might increase the depth of your stormwater pond or increase it by 15 feet, encroach on one of the fields, but yes, you'll be adding more impervious to the site. That's an accurate statement.
More questions or comments? To attempt to provide some input, I would like to see us go ahead and complete the entire project, including the multipurpose fields. I think that it's worthy to have more discussion about the parking situation and make sure that we don't do anything that we might regret later on, but to go in and do part of the project with plans to finish it later on with the number of demands that we have on us constantly, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think if we're going to do a project, we need to do it properly and complete it before we move on to the next one. Is that the kind of input you were looking for?
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
And that's just one, so let's hear for more.
I'm right there with you, Mr. Chairman. Although the parking is a concern to me, how we gonna figure that out, I don't know. But just like you experienced when you went to Harrisburg, we don't want to create a problem like that down there, in my opinion. You know, it's just my opinion, but I think if we're gonna do it, we need to do it right and not say we're gonna go back and visit it again some other time whenever we get the funds or whatever, because we may not get the funds. And so it's best to do it now, and you don't have to remobilize people. They're already there and they can do it and be done with what we want done right to start with. But like I said, the parking though is a concern though. I'd like to see us somehow figure out some more parking there.
I said in my remarks earlier, I was good to go for both if we can work that out.
Sure.
And we can also talk to the town staff, which we've done before, about the library and their experience with the new park, and get a sense of sort of what they're experiencing, how many fields, how they're programming them, to see how it might relate to this site.
Yeah, and I don't know if any of you have spent any time in the Mount Pleasant Library. I have. It is small. I mean, the library staff does a tremendous job of making the very best of utilizing that space. And the comment that I get from a lot of folks all the time is, well, you know, I really thought libraries were going out of style, that people were not reading books and so forth, which those numbers that I mentioned earlier that you can look at certainly proves that that's not the case. But in addition to the fact that people are still using those services at a larger quantity than they have in the past, the programming that the library does is an extremely important part of what they do. As far as the programs with the children, the summer reading programs, the list is extremely long. And of course, they've been somewhat limited during the pandemic as to what they've been able to do, but it's ramping back up now. And I think the appetite has not diminished, but rather has increased. People are anxious to get out and take advantage of these programs, and so they're seeing very, very strong interest in all of those. So that is as important as the book and the online resources and et cetera, et cetera. So it's something that I think we're doing the right thing to pay attention to that.
I wanted to mention one more thing that might be of some value, some interest, and that is with the money that Mount Pleasant's getting, that they've already got plans for that, I suppose. But it might be, though, they could incorporate or maybe even apply for more money and make on-street parking for Washington Street. That would give a few more places. Now, I don't know.
Very narrow street.
Oh, I know it is. I know, but it would require some road work, there's no doubt. You couldn't do it like it is now. It would require road work, which obviously would take money. But, and if we'd done it, it would obviously run our budget up that much more. But then again, though, if we try to move things on the way it is now, that's gonna cost money too. So you sort of have to weigh it out, but, the on-street parking might be something that they could look at. You know, it's just a suggestion. You wanted input, so that's a little extra there.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments, questions on this item?
Yeah, just a timing reminder as we wrap this up. This will go through several more months of design work, and this is likely bid probably early to mid 2023.
The first portion of
So first portion of the calendar year, and then you're talking about how long for build out?
not looking at moving into the library until June or July of 2024. Park opening sooner, hopefully February of '24.
We've been working with the architects, potential renderings for the board to see.
Several months out.
Several months out.
And most likely this would be phased construction so that you'd start on your site package and your fields so that your fields could be open prior to your building.
Okay, thank you very much. We move now to item 4.17 from Planning and Development, Housing and Home Improvement Budget Amendment, and we're happy to have a very patient Kelly Sifford with us.
Thank you. I'll give Kyle a break while I deal with this very riveting issue. So we have $390 of program income for the program that is required to go back into the program to further the cause. And that is all of it. Go ahead, lay all those questions on me.
Well, I think when I said you were very patient, I had forgotten that it was a $390 budget amendment. So you really were patient.
I would just add that I think maybe the next time Kelly is on, she should get to go near the beginning.
Yes.
Seems like she's at the end a
I
lot.
concur.
Maybe
When
we
they
give her a
changed-
break next time.
When they change the name of the department, they send me to the end of the list.
Yes.
Kelly, while you're, is it okay? Are you guys, can you talk a little bit, did you guys, is there a motion required? No?
No.
Can you talk a little about the board approved the additional funds for Habitat tonight? Can you talk a
Yes.
little bit about how you and Habitat work together with community development?
I would love to. So every month, we are meeting with Habitat, the City of Concord, the City of Kannapolis. Sometimes the State Rehab Program will join us. And in those meetings, we are trading and talking about how each of us can meet a particular client's needs in order to get everything they need done. And Habitat is in those meetings as well. And they are oftentimes doing roofs for us, doing floor repairs so that we can come along and weatherize that home. We can't do, a roof replacement with those funds. We might be able to do a little tiny patch, but in order to weatherize a home, you have to make sure that roof is not leaking and that it is sturdy enough to put the ventilation in. So sometimes a roof is the simple thing that is preventing somebody from getting service. So they are sometimes replacing heating and air systems when we're out of money. So we're working with them to see each of those organizations, but in particular Habitat is able to be a little more flexible with some of their funding than the rest of us. And so they have really been assisting us with taking care of some of those items so that we can all work together and really meet the needs of particularly some of our most vulnerable citizens.
Yeah, so I just wanted to have her say that because we've expanded our relationship with them, but also they're not all about just building houses. They go back in now and they're repairing a whole lot more houses in their building. And so this was our way to help them carry that on and reap the benefits as well with some of our clients as well. So.
Yes, they have been a huge help, and as you all are aware, they're struggling with gaining property and being able to construct with the prices as they are. So, they're doing a lot of rehab work right now, and it's been very helpful.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think that's another example of public-private partnerships that I had mentioned earlier, that a lot of times go unmentioned. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And of course, as you see, item 4.18 is the one that I moved to the top of the agenda earlier. So I think that takes us to the approval of the regular meeting agenda. And you all have a copy of that before you. There are several items that we have voted on tonight, and I think that's already been accounted for in our agenda. Does anyone see any adjustments or changes that we need to make? As it stands right now, we have no items under new business, but I suspect that that's likely to change between now and 2 weeks from now. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the regular meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. We do have need of a closed session tonight, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session as authorized by North Carolina General Statute 143-318, A, 3, and 4. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. That motion passes. We are now in closed session. We'd like to thank everybody that joined us online or on television tonight, and we will see you at our regular meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you.